What's up, y'all? Goofy Rexy here, and hope everybody is doing well. And wanted to make a video today and talk about the new player experience. And what sparked this is looking at this post right here on Reddit that's right behind me that sort of talked about the Famine Scourge event and the experience that newer players are having right now with this Famine Scourge event. And it kind of just brought on a lot of thoughts in regards to where the new player experience is right now. I want to talk about some things that I would definitely suggest to improve the beginner player experience, and then sort of, like I said, just explore his post or her post that just kind of talks about sort of the experience that some of the players are having in the Famine Scourge event right now. But let's kind of go into it. This is by Mobile Detective 4483, so shout out to them for doing this post here. But it's titled Famine Event Unfriendly to Lower Level Players, and I'm level 76. I'm having trouble beating even difficulty 3. This is kind of ridiculous. I built my Young Avengers up to gear tier 13. I do have Echo. I built up my Inhumans at A-Force, and I get destroyed on the Mutant node. The Villain node almost did me in on difficulty 2. My point is they are advertising this event heavily, and this character is aimed at players level 85 plus. Am I doing something wrong? People keep saying she's easy to get because of the milestones, but for a good portion of the player base, that's not possible, as it's only based on high score runs. And let's be real, you likely aren't going to go from 125k score run to 500k in 10 days. Should I just cut my losses and quit trying for this event? I don't understand how they expect to bring in new players. And I definitely understand where Mobile Detective is coming from in regards to this post here. A couple of things though I will say, like when I look at the Scourge event, I am not expecting that. I'm not expecting that this is going to be an event, right? It's going to be blatantly for newer players. I think the way that they designed this Scourge event is that it's a way for newer players to be able to kind of gain a taste and an experience of being able to kind of participate in a legendary event. That's sort of the way that I look at the Scourge event, because of course it is a legendary event after all. So I don't think that it's going to be, hey, this player is just, new players are just going to be able to go out and just get a 3-star role. But of course they're lowering the star levels for some of these, for these legendaries, because prior to this it was what, 5 stars for legendary unlocks, a 6-star for Phoenix unlock, right? That was what it was before. So yes, they are making the Scourge legendaries right now more accessible to a broader player base, but I don't think that it's bad that they're not making it available to newer players. However, I do want to sort of kind of talk to a couple points that he does make here, or she does make here, right? I built up my Young Avengers. Now, Young Avengers is one of the required team for the higher difficulties in Scourge. So maybe they didn't necessarily have to build out their Young Avengers that large if they weren't going to be doing anything higher than difficulty 3, but I'm sure that they probably thought that they would be able to do something higher than difficulty 3, and that's probably the reason why they built out their Young Avengers, because they wanted to guarantee that they could get that rogue unlock, right? But they built out that team, they built out Inhumans, they built out A-Force, but then the issue is it's not just about those teams that you're gonna have to build out in for the Scourge event. You also have to build out some other options that realistically aren't as easily accessible to a lot of earlier players in the game. And for instance, like let's pull up the villains roster, right? Like I'll tell you what I use for my Scourge event, and then we'll talk about whether or not that's realistic for any sort of newer player or player that hasn't even done Dark Dimension 4, right? So for instance, best villain characters: Omega Red, Doctor Doom, Morgan Le Fay, Emma, Lady Deathstrike. We have Doctor Strange Heartless, right? Then we can probably look at some other characters, Agatha, right? There's some other villains characters that are here that are good, but not a lot of these characters are accessible for earlier, or even for the most part kind of sort of earlier mid-game players. They're kind of just entered into that bracket. So yeah, it's not gonna. Morgan Le Fay is a Scourge character. Doctor Doom is a character that you have to get through Dark Dimension 4. Omega Red, you literally have to go through a couple obstacles in order to be able to get him, right? You gotta get Kree Minions, then you gotta unlock Nick Fury, then you gotta get Winter Soldier, then you gotta get Secret Avengers in order to be able to get Omega Red. Like the accessibility of those characters in order for a player to be able to kind of get into and then do a Scourge event, it's kind of tough if you don't I don't know how I would have done the villains nodes without Morgan or without Doom or without Omega Red. Like, I don't know how I would have done it without those characters. Those characters aren't really available for earlier or even potentially even mid-game players. For some mid-game players, depending on where they are in the game. So when you're creating an event like this and you're creating a Scourge event overall, yeah, you're making it more accessible to some other players, but at the same time, it's also very gated for a lot of other players in the game as well. And I don't think that there's something that they're really thinking about. I think that in their head, they're like, well, no, you can get a 3-star unlock for this character, but yeah, but you still need good villains characters, good even mutant characters, right? Let's take a look at the mutant options that are available. Now, I think that there's more accessibility for some of these characters for earlier players. If we're kind of taking a look at some of them, I looked it up and I was like, okay, well, there is Emma, but she's in a milestone orb, so you kind of got to get lucky with those shards. She's not farmable anywhere else. Yes, there's Bishop. He's in the War Store, but he's not a preferred War Store character that you want to farm. And ideally, you want to team up Bishop with Jubilee. Jubilee's a legendary unlock. You need other characters in order to be able to unlock her. There's Beast, who you can get through a node, so that's viable. Long Shot in the War Store, preferred character there that you could probably farm. Yes, there's also Shatterstar. You could probably be pieced together a team, to be fair, too, with like Storm, Iceman, Magic is available, but you know, you get it. Like, it's kind of challenging to get some of these characters depending on where you are in the game, and that's sort of kind of the issue. It's not just, okay, we got to build out these Scourge teams, which this person did, and they built out the Scourge teams, but then they found themselves falling short with some good villain options, and it also falling short potentially with some good mutant options just based on where those characters are and where you need to farm it. And then ultimately, can you even really build out so many of those teams to be effective in the Scourge event is also another question. And some of these teams that you do need have legendary characters. How realistic is it for some of those players to be able to get those legendary characters? So there definitely is some credence to this blog post, and why there is definitely some frustration, and why he's probably asking the question, like, how do they expect to bring in new players like this? And it made me think about sort of just like the new player experience and some changes that I would like to see them make to make it a little bit easier for players overall. And now this is not necessarily about the Scourge event itself. This is just, for me, like some things that I think would definitely help to fast track some of the players here in Marvel Strike Force that are starting now, or that are been playing the game for a few months, or been playing the game for a year, that I definitely think would help. Now, if you're kind of a newer player here, you're just kind of starting coming into Marvel Strike Force, I think one of the things that I think would definitely be very helpful, it's in regards to character level, right? There's a massive grind. You can kind of get to level 60 fairly easily, like quickly, through a couple of weeks of grind and play. But once you get to level 60, the grind to get to like level 61, or actually I guess for the most part you can go from like level 0 to 63 fairly fast. But once you get to 63, it's like a slog to get to 64, and another slog to get to 65, and a slog to get to 66. And the problem is that there's so much content that's locked behind a particular level, like level 70. Then there's content that's locked behind level 75. Like, I think that one of the things that they definitely should do is sort of kind of fast track so that earlier players can actually get to level 75 faster, right? That way they can sort of gain access. They won't be able to do it on day one, but they'll be able to gain access to doing the Doom campaigns earlier. They'll be able to gain access to being able to do the Doom Chapter 2 campaign a little bit earlier. Now, granted, they're still going to need gear in order for them to be able to build up those characters, which then it leads me to the next point. It's about time now that like certain things that are antiquated sort of resources, like blue mats, like green mats, like T3s, things of that nature, it is about time now that those become sort of like, you get them in an abundance, right? Like right now, the way that this game is that this game has like backwards progression a lot, where once you advance to the next sort of raid, then you start to lose resources from that you would be getting from the previous raid. Like, that shouldn't be the case. You should still be able to get the old resources once you transfer over to doing new content. There shouldn't just be this cutoff, and that happens a lot with raids. That happens sometimes with some campaigns, right? There's a lot of sort of like backwards progression that this game currently has right now that I would like to see them sort of make some changes towards, but also overall just increase sort of the gear allotment, increase the T3 allotment, increase the T2 allotment, increase even maybe the T1 allotments in the earlier stages of the game so that players can start to build up their rosters, can build up their characters a little bit faster so that they can then, and of course then fast track them to level 75 so that they can get to content quicker as opposed to being gated behind. Things like Dark Dimension 2 should be accessible, in my opinion, within the first 3 months of the game now, not with spending, but with realistic gameplay. I think that that's something that they definitely should make available because, I mean, get players to be able to get to orange gear quicker. That's just the way that I look at it. Give players an opportunity to be able to get to orange gear quicker. It shouldn't take a player at this point with Dark Dimension 5 being the new Dark Dimension. It shouldn't take players essentially, I think it's like over a year, 18 months for them to be able to do Dark Dimension 3. Like, you may think that that's okay, but if you realistically want to keep newer players engaged, you got to get them to go to end game content a little bit faster as newer players, or else they're going to leave the game because they're not progressing. They're looking at other content creators, they're looking at other players who are playing the game, and they're like, bro, like, I can't get there. It's not realistic. I'm gonna have to wait a year to play this game before I can really even experience that sort of content. It's just not feasible, in my opinion, for the long-term growth of a game like this. So for me personally, fast track them to level 75, increase the gear allotment. I thought about legendary characters too, and this was something that was brought up in my chat. Now that they're making these changes to these Scourge events where legendary characters are now unlockable at 3 stars, I think one of the things that I would like to see them do as well with some of the older legendary characters, and I'm talking about every legendary character that is maybe not Omega Red per se, maybe not Jubilee per se, but for some of those older legendary characters now, maybe you can include those characters too. Have them be 3-star unlocks, right? Instead of it being a 4-star, 4 or 5-star grind, allow that to be a 3-star grind now so that earlier players can now gain access to Jubilee faster, gain access to Omega Red faster, gain access to some of these other legendaries faster, especially since some of these other legendaries you need in order to be able to unlock another legendary. Give them access to those legendaries a little bit faster so that they can sort of start to progress in Marvel Strike Force a little bit quicker, in my opinion. So that's one thing that I definitely think that they could make some changes to. I look at campaign nodes and some of the campaign nodes for some of these older legacy characters. I would think it would be nice to sort of increase the shards that you're able to get from them. So for a character, I mean, I don't even know, maybe Thor, right? Like, bad example, but maybe change this from being 2 stars to now being 4 stars for some of these older legacy characters. Yes, I know that they gotten reworked or whatever, but you're releasing new characters that are better than the reworked characters sometimes anyways. So why not increase the shard allotment that you can get for some of these campaign nodes by doubling those shards, in my personal opinion. I think that would be fine for you to make some changes for and to do. They have increased recently the gold for the newer campaign nodes, but I would like to see them increase the gold allotment that you're going to be able to get for some of the older campaign nodes, and overall just even increase farmability for characters, right? Like, there's a lot of players that tell me, hey dude, I still have yet to get Icarus, I've yet to get Cersei shards, I've yet to get XYZ character shards, because those characters have not become farmable as of yet, because they don't make characters farmable fast enough in Marvel Strike Force. So to me personally, I look at so many different things and so many different areas where they could definitely make some changes, and I could probably go on and on, but this video is going on long enough. So just curious, guys, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think would be a really good way to sort of make some changes here for the beginner game experience? My top things: fast track players to level 75, get them there faster, get them to start doing Dark Dimension 2 quicker, Dark Dimension 3 faster, increase the gear allotment, things like training mats, things like T3s and T2s, increase those, change the legendary unlocks so that they're now 3-star legendary unlocks, older shards, double those shards, and just overall increase the actual farmability of characters, because there's characters that have been out for so long that are still not available to be farmed as of yet. But listen, guys, want to know what your guys' thoughts are. I always like to talk about topics like this. I think this is more, I guess, interesting things to talk about sometimes. So always curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are as well. But if you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel here. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you know when my videos do go live, and so that you can follow content a little bit, follow the content that I create a little bit more closely here. Join the Discord also as well, guys. I'd love to be able to chat and have some discussions there as well. Appreciate you guys. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Y'all be safe. Bye.